USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, who, now, when you were down this past trip, and like just a week, 10 days ago, did you get in a goodbye to Rip Ride Rockit? Because, again, it's closing 18th of this month.
No, Jim, I did not, unfortunately. I did see a lot of people doing it, but it was one of those things where the wait time was never satisfactory enough with us. But the time before that, I thought, and I think I pretty much was like, I didn't think I was coming back down, so I said my goodbyes then.
Oh.
So I didn't get it this time, but I got it last time, at least in my head.
Okay, and you did the thing you were supposed to. I mean, to explain, folks, Rip Ride Rockit, it has its authorized soundtrack. What is it? 30 songs from 6 different categories: country, rap, all of that.
Yeah.
But there's the infamous secret menu, where if you know the right code, for example, if you plug in 122, you get the Rolling Stones. If you Start Me Up, or, you're a Madonna fan, 310, you get Vogue. You did that, right?
Jim, every time. I've never listened to an original. Now, I'll tell you, Lauren didn't know what she was doing, so I think she accidentally got ABBA every single time.
No.
It's just like, I guess she was in the Mamma Mia phase. But for me, Jim, I looked that up, and you can go online, and I guess you only got a couple more days. Poor guy who had this blog probably was getting tons of hits. But I tried probably 3-4 different ones. And I always landed I'm a big Journey fan. So Wheel in the Sky by Journey was the first time. I did Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. And then one of the favorites is Kermit the Frog, Rainbow Connection.
Yes. In fact, that's a twofer this summer. We lost, the Muppet Vision 3D, and now we're going to lose Rip Ride Rockit. And that number, folks, for those of you who, you want to pay tribute to Kermit before he moves to the other roller coaster, that's 902. All right. Anyway, we have, oddly enough, middle of August, which means Halloween Horror Nights starts in like 5 minutes.
Right.
And you dug up all sorts of news about that. So I'll tell you what, folks, we'll get to that. Out ahead of a really terrific interview, by the way. Later on in today's show, we have Brian Krosnick from Parklore, who has just done an amazing 2-part story about what Epic Universe could be at full build out, and but given what Brian does is so interesting, we brought him on the show not to just talk about that, but his whole process and how he set up Parklore. But that's later on in the show. We first got to talk about this Halloween horror stuff. And before we do that, we have to talk about our sponsor, which is unlockedmagic.com. And if you're planning a trip to Universal Orlando or Walt Disney World, please check out unlockmagic.com. They offer real discounts up to 12% off of theme park tickets, with over $10 million in savings. Unlock Magic is the best option for the biggest savings. So please visit unlockmagic.com and save today. And maybe get some tickets to Halloween Horror Nights, which, though the stuff we're about to talk about, I think you have to go to Universal to get tickets for, right?
Right. I think so. Well, the one thing that we've been talking about, Jim, is, I'm very new to the Halloween Horror Nights. I've got to see some of the props and have been following online and so forth. But we probably talked about it last year, but I was still even in more infancy and didn't know what it was. But the Behind the Screams tour has been announced. So this seems pretty interesting, and I think this is where I would probably spend my money, considering that I'm a giant scaredy cat when it comes to jump scares and dark places. So have you ever done a Behind the Screams tour, Jim?
Well, I've actually been lucky enough that the nice folks at Universal, I mean, I still remember it was the very first year they had the theme park rights to The Walking Dead.
Mm.
And, they took me, in fact, it was Nick, myself and Nancy came down. And what was so funny is, I mean, we, and this was the early days. So, we were in the hospital wing of Dead Inside.
Oh, there you go.
But what's so funny is we were there early enough that they had set up the physical plant and they had one actor in the Dead makeup. And the thing is, the poor guy, first he ran at us in the hallway and then he disappeared through the wall as we moved through the rest of space and jumped out someplace else. But, oh man, we were making that poor guy work hard. But it was lovely to get in there during the day with all of the work lights on and see the level of craft. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, see, that's kind of what I'm into. So for those not aware, that the Behind the Screams tour really is it's basically lights on. This one's scare actor free. They don't even have the one guy jumping from room to room. But it's basically of the select haunted houses. So it's not all of them. And they actually have two different packages. There's a 3 haunted house tour, and that's $99 per person. And this year you can do Hatchet and Chains Demon Bounty Hunters, which I was pretty excited about. Dolls, Let's Play Dead, and then Grave of Flesh. Right. So if you want to fork out $199, then you would also get Fallout, the Jason Universe, the Terrifier, the Galkin Monsters of the North, that's the Norwegian one, the El Arista, the Spanish Haunting, and WWE Presents the Horrors of the Wyatt Six. So, like, for someone like myself and everybody that has been sending me messages saying, well, obviously you're going to go now because there's a WWE tie-in.
Yeah.
I would pay $200 to do this because it also includes a buffet lunch and an exclusive pin. So, you got to get the exclusive pin. But this sounds like a great deal because obviously, I'm a themed entertainment fan. I would love the craftsmanship. Like, I absolutely loved going into the tribute stores, not necessarily to buy stuff. That's Lauren's job. But I love seeing how they set everything up and the craftsmen and so forth. So, like, that's my kind of jam for Halloween Horror Nights. So if you're like me, a little bit more scared of or just, I wouldn't say I'm scared. I don't like being startled. This would be a good option for you.
Okay. Now, there is one thing worth noting. Both of these tours, the 6 house and the 3 house version, there's one house notably that's off the list, right?
Yeah, you're not going to Five Nights at Freddy's, so you're just going to have to try to go down to your local Chuck E. Cheese at midnight and break in. And that's your best bet there.
I wonder what that's about. Is that, face it, hadn't we heard that Henson is doing the outfit? So the creature shop.
Right.
So, okay.
Maybe it's not. Who knows? Who knows if it's ready or not or what the deal is. But either way, maybe that's a thing they'll hold out for next year or what have you. But there's a lot going on. So it is, like you said, it is August. So obviously it's Halloween time. So that starts, the 29th? And it runs all the way until November 2nd. So there's 10 houses, 4 scare zones, 2 street experiences, the Nightmare Fuel stage show and the Lagoon show, which you and I should talk about at another show because I don't even know what those are. So I would love to pick your brain, but we have more stories to talk about here today.
Okay, before we do that, one quick aside here, because again, I remember I described how Nate and I went down and did that first Walking Dead house. Now, the gentleman who's creative lead on that and does all the masterful makeup for that, Greg Nicotero, was there, and we went out to lunch with him afterwards. And I have to tell this story because you love this, Eric. Greg talked about, when you work makeup, you're the guy up at 3:00 in the morning because whoever it is that's being put in the makeup is in the chair at 5, so that he can then walk on the set at 8. And so Greg is literally working on an appliance for a particularly bloody thing. But the thing is that, he's leaving it for his assistant. And he's then driving to the airport in Atlanta and getting on a plane to go overseas to begin working on a brand new movie in Germany. Okay, so, he finishes the appliance, but it's a bloody gross thing. But, all right, it's done. And, okay, now I'm going to drive to the airport, and now I'm going to go through security. And he's tired, and he hasn't really thought about what he's doing or what he's wearing. So, so he gets to, the security checkpoint, and like all of us, he takes his shoes off, he puts them on, the beltway, and looks down, and they're splattered with red paint. But again, it looks like red blood. And then he looks at his fingers, and he hasn't really washed his hands, and they're kind of a red tint. And he's like, I look like somebody who's killed somebody and is trying to escape the country. And he's just like, oh, this is not going to end well. And but you got to remember, it's 4:00 in the airport. Everybody's tired. Homeland Security is like, yeah, whatever, go. Just get on the plane.
Just pull up his IMDb page. I promise this is what I do for a living. And he was always a good interview. I remember watching all the Talking Deads back when AMC would have that. And I was like, I know that name when you mentioned that. And I'm like, how do I know that name? And he was he is
the sweetest guy and tells the funniest stories and does the greatest work. And speaking of great work, we now have images from inside of Universal Horror Unleashed, the thing in Vegas that, wow, we are less than a week now,
right, Jim? By the time we talk next week, this will be open, and we will. Let's just chalk it up. We're going to be watching lots of videos and telling everybody what we're seeing. But right now, we do have. There were some videos released. James Keaton, which is Jack the Clown, he's an actor, shared the first look images from inside the year-round horror experience. So there's some images of looks like a stage with maybe like a crazy clown. You seeing that? And
yes.
And then we see a Scarecrow the Reaping, like the full house, and it looks like if Living with the Land was left abandoned for for many, many years. I gotta say, this is really cool. And it didn't give too much more, but they did mention something that I have questions about. They said story-driven characters and guests can sit and interact with scare actors for up to 30 minutes. Is that seems crazy. I mean, maybe there's like a waiting area, but you're going to do a Q&A with a scare actor? That seems unique.
Wow. What's kind of interesting is, if you think about Dark Universe and how so many people enjoy their time with Igor.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Maybe this is sort of an expansion on that idea. Not necessarily for example, Jack the Clown. I don't, 30 minutes with Jack the Clown. I'd need therapy. He is big time scary. But on the other hand, supporting characters that they've written out, bits for, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, these images, don't get me wrong. Universal does amazing work when it comes to the houses, both in Hollywood and Orlando. But geez, this stuff for Vegas looks like next level. Really, really beautifully detailed and lit, and holy cow.
Right. Now it's a reason to go back out to Las Vegas. I kind of fell in love with Vegas for the history and everything when we were there earlier this year. And we did manage to kind of see some of where this area, I think it was Area 51 or Area whatever. It seems like a great little nook in that area. But yeah, we'll have to keep following. And next week we'll have more information. I think they'll probably have some more videos out there for it.
Okay. I think you and I are on a plane at some point.
I know.
I'm not going to lie. The other reason I kind of want to go to Vegas is I've been paying attention to this Wizard of Oz thing at the Sphere they're doing.
Yeah.
And by the way, have you seen the big new social media thing for Vegas right now is they have this giant set of inflatable Wicked Witch of the East feet that are sticking out from under the sphere, as if it landed on her.
Yes.
And it's like, it's like somebody in publicity or marketing earned their check that week. That's brilliant.
That was no, it was absolutely. But if let's say we go to Vegas, and then I think we just hop over to Hollywood, because that's not too far afterwards, right? We did find out that there is a similar experience happening for Halloween Horror Nights out in Hollywood. For those out there, it's for past members, it is the Lights On Fallout walkthrough. So this is for annual and season pass members. So you get a special walkthrough, so there's no scare actor. So it's very similar. Obviously you're not going to be taking photos or anything. So we won't be seeing it unless we go there, but it is a limited capacity. And they're allowing you to RSVP starting the 20th for basically part of their past member appreciation days. So, If you're out in Hollywood, we probably won't make it out there in time, but if you are, go give it a look and enjoy the lights on experience.
That's really smart. Wow. Okay. And now, okay, you RSVP starting on August 20th. And right now we know of just 2 dates for this thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's the 16th of September and the 24th September. Maybe they'll add more, but
wow.
I think it's a good perk, right?
No, I have to say, coming from the pass holder appreciation department, I as a pass holder, I would feel appreciated to get something like, because again, remember what the price point is for the walkthrough for Orlando.
Right.
You know, no, you come visit ours for free.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I bet there would be a nice online queue for that one. So get up early.
There we go. Okay. Now back to Florida. Our pal BioReconstruct. You know, I don't know. He has to land at some point, right? I mean, the man has to eat. You know, and go to the bathroom.
Maybe he lives on a satellite. We've never,
Okay.
Can't say I've seen him. But maybe he just is in a giant hot air balloon all the time. Who knows? But yeah, he sent out some aerial photos of a road. So remember last week we were talking about those green pillars, and we just said, hey, look, it's going to be a wall. Nothing too sexy there. But it does look like there is a new road that was paved just this last week, and then now it has lane markings. So obviously, you can tell we're obsessive fans because, like, who gets excited about a paved road? but obviously the questions come into play. Like, what do we know from this, Jim? Like, what does this tell us? Anything? It's just, hey, there's going to be more activity.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this tells us that this is a piece of property that is seriously being developed. More to the point, I mean, even the significance of throwing a line down the middle of it, it's two-way traffic.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Is like you could easily and I don't know what their laws are. I'm not going to look that stuff up either. I have better things to do than look at Florida highway laws. But I mean, if you just paved a road for backhoes and tractors and stuff to haul, you probably wouldn't have to paint a line. But it seems like they might be getting some decent traffic there, and they want to avoid some head-on collisions.
There we go. But again, to bring things full circle here, folks, the park that this is happening at is Epic Universe, and we just had an amazing conversation with Brian Krosnick of Parklore about, again, his 2-part series about what might happen with the newest park at the Universal Land Resort over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And when we get back from this break, Eric and I will sit down with Mr. Krosnick and go through his history, how he came to do what he does. But first, we got this.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo Coffee Machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista-quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your Virtuo Pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
And we're back. Okay, so if you're online and are already a theme park enthusiast, well, Eric and I don't need to explain to you what Parklore is. You've no doubt already discovered this entertaining mix of well-written and researched articles about various ride shows and attractions, not to mention seen some startlingly on-the-money pieces that then speculate on what various theme parks will look like at full build-out. And this is actually why Eric and I have Brian on the Epic Universal podcast today. He recently posted a 2-part piece that takes a look at what Epic Universal might look like at full build-out. And we wanted to talk to him about, well, how he got into doing this, what made him decide to launch Parklore, what his creative process is. Anyway, before we do that, I guess we have to formally welcome our guest to today's show. And folks, please, a very warm welcome to Brian Krosnick of Parklore.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Eric. I'm so excited to be here. This is the highlight of my year. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's you still got a couple more months, so hopefully it'll
there we go.
We're happy to have you.
It couldn't get better. It couldn't get better.
Santa, remember Santa? All right. Anyway. Okay. By the way, before we get to your personal history, I want to talk about how once, well ahead of when the Imagineers proposed doing this, building a tropical Americas area at a Disney theme park, one that would combine rides, shows, and attractions that were based on characters from Disney's Encanto and mixing them with a thrill ride to Indiana Jones. That wasn't for Animal Kingdom, though, right?
It's true. It's one of my predictions that I got so close with. It is true that I did happen to kind of envision putting those two together in a theme park land, and just not at Animal Kingdom, but I got close.
Florida. You had them in Florida. Okay. I mean,
just a few miles away.
All right. Take the wins you can get.
I think isn't that horseshoes where that works? Horseshoes and hand grenades, right? If you're close,
there
counts.
We go.
So we're playing by those rules.
Amazing.
Okay, now just to get to what you do over at Parklore, well, look, it's not what I expected from somebody who works on, for lack of a better term, the fantasy football side of theme park fandom. I mean, for me, that's what I personally thought about the full build out stuff, and wrongly, I might add. Me personally, I largely avoided this stuff online because some of the stuff that I had previously read online were by people who didn't seem to actually understand the real mechanics of theme park design. I mean, they talk about, let's do this super deluxe e-ticket that is then based on an IP that didn't do really all that well at the box office, the Condor Man ride. And so there was never, ever a chance that a ride like that would ever get built in the real world, whereas you... Well, what's genuinely refreshing about what you're doing over at Parklore is, well, for example, this epic 2-part thing that you just posted over there about Epic Universe and what it might be like at full build-out. What you wrote reflects the way that theme parks actually grow over time, how a lot of the time the Imagineers, or in this case, the folks who work for Universal Creative, well, they have to do things like take into consideration like where the park's perimeter road is, where the loading docks are, all of that. Or for that matter, that every ride that gets added to a theme park isn't necessarily always going to be an e-ticket. That sometimes in order to quickly add hourly capacity to your park, you just order a flat right out of a catalog and then lightly retheme it. And that, I got to tell you flat out, Brian, that's what I so enjoyed about your 2-part Epic Universal full build-out thing on Parklore. It wasn't fantasy football. It had the whiff of reality. So again, this is why Eric and I wanted to have you on the show today to talk about, what's the line that Liam Neeson says in all the Taken movies? How did you acquire this particular set of skills that then allowed you to put together pieces like this?
Well, thank you, Jim. That's a high compliment, and it's a great point. I think for me, the bedrock of my interest in this industry really was in amusement parks. I think sometimes those get overlooked. People tend to think, well, listen, I'm into the Disney parks or the Universal parks. but I am really lucky to have grown up in Ohio, in sort of a golden age for amusement parks here. We had not only, of course, Cedar Point, the king of all roller coaster parks, but also, at that time, Paramount's Kings Island. We had a little local community park that became Six Flags Ohio, and just across the lake from Six Flags Ohio was SeaWorld Ohio, which I know people find hard to believe. That SeaWorld, the one with Shamu, yes, there was one in Ohio. So for me, I think kind of growing up at that intersection of all of those amusement parks, it gave me a different kind of entrance into the fandom of the theme parks of Disney and Universal. And I have a lot of trips I've taken friends to parks to the extent that they all go, okay, I get it. That roller coaster is a B&M because it has the little pre-drop and the 4-across seating, and the support columns are cylinders. And okay, that one, I get it. It's an Intamin, and I know what that means. And they're the ones who take big risks and big swings. So I think all of that kind of coalesced with, also taking the classic East of the Mississippi annual family vacation to Disney World. So I sort of grew up, I think, in both fandoms, theme parks and amusement parks. So I was the kid with, like so many people listening were, the kid with theme park maps up on the bedroom walls instead of, Backstreet Boy posters. But yeah, I think like it's a really interesting time and place for me to have grown up in this fandom and kind of approached it from a different point of view.
No, absolutely. And hearing your background, it makes perfect sense that you have that sort of good practical knowledge of theme parks. And again, obviously, what with the family trips to Disney and Universal, knew what the big guns were up to. But I have to ask, when it comes time for college, given your enthusiasm for this field of entertainment, you don't sign up for classes in theme park design, but rather you pursue an Ohio teaching license.
Yeah, that's true. I think that I thought, what does a kid from Northeast Ohio, how would I even begin? How could I envision that for myself? And of course, I regret that now because I have friends from the area who are now working at all these different firms and things like that. So I'm like, oh, maybe I could have done that. But I didn't. I did. I went to school to be a teacher. I have an Ohio teaching license to teach special education. That's definitely the way that I kind of got started. But I remember a friend asking, it sounds like I'm making it up like it's for a movie, but I remember a friend asking, so like, what happens now? You just like become a teacher and you teach for 35 years and then you retire. And I remember saying, I don't know. I guess that's how I'll get started, but I don't think that that's really my story. Like, I don't think I'm going to be one of those people who's just a teacher for their whole life. I probably thought I was going to be like a tour guide at Disneyland. But what really happened is I found a really unique entry point into education, which was working as an educator at a science museum that was somewhat nearby that I'd kind of grown up at. And if anybody listening is from the Midwest, you may know of COSI, the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus, Ohio. It's been around for a really, really long time, but right at that perfect age for me, in 1999, COSI had relocated to a brand new facility, 320,000 square foot, state-of-the-art science museum. Actually, a lot of science museums were moving locations at that time. The Exploratorium in San Francisco is another one. And they all, I think, took it as an opportunity to reinvent themselves and decide what their thing would be. And for COSI, they decided that the thing would be hyper immersive, almost theme park levels of cinematic spaces. So I encourage anybody listening to look into it, Google COSI, C-O-S-I, and then look up the Ocean exhibit, which is this totally immersive temple of Poseidon with a 35-foot statue of Poseidon and waterfalls pouring out. Progress, which is sort of a turn of the century Midwestern town that you get to visit in 1898. And then you turn the corner and you're at the same intersection, but in 1962. And you get to see what changed and how progress is part of science. And then the exhibit that made me who I am today, which was called Adventure, and had the very bold assertion that going into the unknown is just as much a part of science as, studying the ocean or outer space or any of those more obvious things. 10,000 square foot, totally immersive tropical island at nighttime where you were trying to find clues and open doors and awaken animatronic tikis. So that's definitely an interesting entry, but I think it's another kind of fusion point of education and themed entertainment in a way.
Now, speaking of which, that in your job as an educator at COSI, you were more on the outreach side initially, right?
Yes, that's true. It's a time-honored job in Central Ohio, is COSI on wheels, and getting behind the wheel of a 14-foot box truck and traveling a week at a time throughout Ohio and the surrounding states. So we maybe came by, Eric's elementary school at some point and did a...
Listen, very likely. Or I would have I've been to COSI, so I might have been there when you were there. Who knows?
Yeah. Cool. It's a pretty amazing thing to stand in front of 500 kids and lead them through a 45-minute story where along the way you're calling kids up and doing experiments and getting them excited about science. It's pretty cool job.
Okay. But over time you go from on the road doing these educational presentations to you then at COSI start developing educational programs, right? Working on the content side of things with the museum's design team, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think that I was really lucky that the team there maybe saw interest in this area, or, I don't want to say talent or skills, but something very foundational that they said, we can work with this. So I was there about 10 years, and toward the end, I was fully in the experience development side of things and working sort of broadly across exhibits, programs, outreach, and getting to see how the sausage is made in a way. And it was just beyond my wildest dreams to be able to walk around some of these exhibit spaces on a day that the museum was closed and have all the show lights were off and the house lights were on, and be able to dig in and see some of how it worked and why it was designed the way it was. It was just really incredible. The pandemic sort of derailed me and a lot of people in the museum industry, but I was lucky to move onto an art museum, and pretty recently actually moved across the country. I'm now in Central California to work at a brand new children's museum that was started from the ground up. I'm one of the sort of founding team members of a children's museum. So I continue to live in that space between education and content development and exhibit and experience design. So it's just a perfect fit. It feels great.
Yeah, and more to the point, hearing your background, hearing your work history, I mean, this explains why you approach themed entertainment design so realistically when you do these full build-out things. I mean, you take a very practical approach because, again, you actually work in the field. You have a hands-on knowledge when it comes to the space. But that said, you've also written a lot of really great theme park history pieces that were posted online. So how did that start?
Well, this was beyond my wildest dreams. When I was in college, I was hired as a freelance writer for the website Theme Park Tourist, which maybe some listeners even are familiar with or have memories of. I started out in probably 2011 or so. So it was the age of the listicle. And everybody loved top 10 lists of the best smells at Disney World or the top 10 scariest animatronics. So I was really able to, fall into that pretty quickly and couldn't believe that I was being paid to write about theme parks on the side while I was in college. But, you know, it really sort of changed trajectories for me when I asked the owner of the website, Nick Sim, if I could try something unusual, which would be to write the like in-depth history of a local amusement park for me, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, but Six Flags Ohio, prior to becoming Six Flags, was called Geauga Lake. And for a brief shining moment, it fused with SeaWorld and became what they called the world's largest amusement park. And then, of course, kind of predictably for early 2000s Six Flags, it all totally fell apart and is a vacant parking lot now. So
you're telling me Cleveland didn't have the market? There wasn't enough people in Cleveland to keep that away, open?
Absolutely. They said, you know what? We've got one motel in town. What else do we need for a world destination? So anyway, I wrote that story. Nick, the owner, said, go for it. Let's see what you come up with. And that piece, last I checked, was at something like 6 million views. It was just crazy. Okay. And people around town would say, wait, you wrote that? It was a big deal in the area. So I kind of said, listen, what if I did this, but for other things? The next big piece I wrote was the history of alien encounter, and then the history of journey into imagination. And don't get me wrong, Jim, you're cited all over those articles. The OG, the one and only. But
I'm going to call into question some of your sources right now. In fact, let me tell a quick story here. At one point, I was out in LA doing some research. In fact, it was about the Disney MGM backlot project, the one they were actually going to build in Burbank, just up the street from Disney. Mm-hmm. And so I go to the Burbank Public Library and I asked the research person there, well, this was going to happen here. And I'm sure somewhere back in the stacks you've got info about this. The research librarian says, hang on. And she disappears backstage for about 20 minutes. And she finally comes out with this one piece of paper. And it goes, well, I've been looking, but so far all I found is this. And she hands me a printout of an article that I had written. And it was one of these, it's kind of a Mobius strip moment, but I thought, let's have some fun with it. And it's like, oh no, not this bastard. You can't believe a word that this guy says. Oh my God. And she says, oh no, I'm so sorry. Well, why can't you trust him? Well, he's me. And, she was like, that has never happened to me before. I've never handed something to somebody. But anyway, so not to put too fine a point on it, folks, but how does Brian go from writing stories about like the alien encounter, the journey into imagination history, to creating things like his epic 2-part article about how Epic Universe might look at full build-out? We will get to that in a moment. But first, this
episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Did my card go through?
Oh no.
Your small business depends on its internet. So switch to Verizon Business. And you could get LTE business internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data for unlimited business.
There we go.
Get the internet you need at the price you want. Verizon Business. Starting price for LTE business internet, 25 megabits per second unlimited data plan with select Verizon Business smartphone plan savings. Terms apply.
And we're back. Okay, so where we left off, you're now writing for theme park tourists, and you've now written 50 to 70 pieces about closed theme park attractions. You know, got people, telling you they love your articles. They regularly reference them like it's Wikipedia, but then...
Yeah, so, like happens to all of us, I think that... theme park tourists had sort of put all of its eggs in the Facebook basket, which seemed like a really good move, I think, in the 2010s, beginning of the decade. There was just unlimited potential and so much reach. I was... Why are you laughing, Eric?
Because I do this for a living and I know what the algorithms do to us now.
Yes.
So I lucky to get 2%. If you even sponsor it. But yeah, no, I remember the glory days, but continue.
Yes. Yes. So I was, really obviously the coolest thing ever to write for them. And the fact that they allowed me to continue producing these in-depth things, they were doing really, really well. And then sort of began to tip in the other direction. And I think so many people went through this, but all of a sudden you need all the ads to support the writers, and you're trying to fight against the algorithm to get attention. And I just think it sort of started to feel like, man, this is really going to be rough if Facebook is the only audience. So I started to feel like it would be really, really cool if I were able to take all of this stuff that I'd written and do my own thing with it. So, it just worked out perfectly that in 2020, we all ended up with a lot of time on our hands and we were all stuck at home. And so I sort of decided this is my chance. I reached out to the owner, who at that time, Nick had passed away. It was his wife, Natalie. And I said, listen, I love this. I've written for you for almost 10 years. I'm so proud of everything I've written. I don't want to change that. I want to keep working with you. But I think I would love to take some of this work and make my own thing out of it, create an archive of my work or something like that. And it was the most amazing thing because I hemmed and hawed about asking, thinking that she could rightly say, no, of course not. This is the bread and butter of our website. People come here for this collection of intertwined, in-depth histories. And, at that time, by the way, we were well into the YouTube era where a lot of YouTubers were now telling the same stories. Now, sometimes, by the way, I would kind of see one pop up and go to the middle and hear my own sentence being spoken by someone else and go,
welcome to my world.
I love it. Listen, Jim gets credited on these part. I'll be watching a video and then they'll say, and they'll take the website that Jim and I created essentially and have a screenshot. And I'm like, and I'll bring my kids in. I'll be like, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
Jim's quoted again. And I coded that. So it's an honor, but yet I also understand like the frustration that would come.
That's you weren't there at 10 o'clock at night when I was typing that. But anyway,
right.
Okay.
And by the way, to give credit where credit's due, I was becoming frustrated seeing the YouTube sensation of retelling these stories in that format and seeing hundreds of thousands of views. And I'm thinking, could you at least put me in the credits or something? But I will say, without asking, Kevin Perjurer of Defunct Land did. I have an IMDb page because of Kevin.
I found you there. I was like typing. I'm like, oh, look, he worked on Defunct Land. All right, he's credible.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, great.
And Kevin invited me on his podcast in probably 2019. So I felt like, okay, like I've got Defunct Land behind me. Like Defunct Land is saying this is good stuff, and so maybe there's something here, and I can go it alone. So anyway, I was really touched that Natalie said, absolutely, like, please, this is your stuff. You wrote this, like, take it, make your own thing. Still to this day, she checks in and says, how are things going with Parklore? Which is really, really cool because
that's sweet.
Theme Park Tourist kind of threw in the towel earlier this year and said, listen, our era is past. We don't want to pay to play on social media. So I was really grateful, but I will say my experience there is what led me to make sure that my website, Parklore, is totally ad free and is supported by members who join for a couple of bucks a month. That was really important to me, is to say, I want this to be nice to look at, a nice place to participate, and I don't want to have to generate content every day just to get clicks to pay the bills. So it was a great experience and definitely an awesome start to what I'm doing.
Well, again, so Parklore gets started, and I have to admit, what you did to make your site stand out from the crowd. I mean, again, very smart approach to the data visualization that you did.
Yeah, thank you. I started with just putting all of those in-depth histories and resourcing them and getting new images. But I think once I figured out that Parklore would not just be an archive of my work, I started to go, well, then what is it? How do I add to this if I'm sort of out of stories, or stories that interest me at least? And I did start some like unusual data visualization projects. I think the first one that people really took note of was what I call my Park Paths series. And, people thought this was a really great idea after the fact. And I was like, oh, maybe it was. I sort of took the layouts of the parks, the overhead aerial imagery, and I drew the park's pathways. And my thinking was that like those paths sort of have a story to tell. For those of us who are really into the parks, we think we know the parks really well. But I think there was something there that I was like, look at Disneyland. And when you just turn that negative space of pathways into positive space by coloring them in on a map, you look at it and you go, wow, look, it's so organic. And Disneyland has all these little tiny arterial pathways that sort of wind around. You can tell that like those pathways are bending and twisting to accommodate things that were added or taken away. And then you do the same thing with Magic Kingdom, and you see that Magic Kingdom is filled with all of these wide pathways and plazas and angles, and that there's a story there, which is that Magic Kingdom is the Disneyland formula operationalized. It's how you take Disneyland and give it capacity. Disneyland's pathways you could get lost in. Magic Kingdom's, when you pull out and see those paths from above, it's very clear that there's one main path through the park that drops you off at the front door of every attraction. And if you keep going and you see Tokyo Disneyland, it's just made of all these concentric circles that are just efficiency incarnate. And then Disneyland Paris's pathways, they show these big lands, but connected by little tiny pathways that give you the intimacy of Disneyland, but the efficiency of a park like Magic Kingdom. And I think it's just like a totally new way to see things. And it really amazed me, and people really seem to respond to it and go, wow, I never thought of it this way. So
your Pathways project was brilliant, but Eric was telling me about, he especially liked your slider project. Eric, can you explain about that?
Oh, I love old layouts. I like to look at a building and say, hey, to myself, what was that building and what was there and how did they break it apart and configure it? And you have a section on your website that allows you to actually take the layout and you can slide over it. It's a nice little animated, aspect to. So what brought to that?
Well, that's a great question. Like many of us, I feel like I spent a lot of time Googling like layout of the seas with Nemo and friends. And when you're lucky, you can find blueprints or schematics or something, but you have to have some sort of advanced degree sometimes to figure out what you're looking at. So I initially just started thinking, another sort of visualization thing I could do is to take these layouts and draw them so we could have, the community, the people who care about these parks, could have, some concise, coherent collection of ride layouts so that we could sort of see things like, oh, I had no idea that scene was next to that scene, or who would have thunk that those share a wall, or, oh, when you're looking at that scene, you're facing that way. Who knew? It was just sort of a spark of an idea, and it's now been over 100 ride layouts later that I've drawn, and I've organized them into some collections. And the one you're talking about, I call Then and Now, which shows the same building and what it had then and what it has now. And it allows you to go, oh, like, the scene with the snowflakes in Adventure Through Inner Space, that's where the third Star Tours pod is now. So
yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Standing in Diagon Alley, and I'd be getting eaten right now by Jaws.
You're
right?
Exactly right.
It's so great. It's so great. It's a great feature.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. Okay, so how do you then go from these to the full build out thing that you do so well now?
Well, I can tell you that when all of this sums up, I started to kind of figure out that the mission statement of Parklore, and the thing that would hopefully differentiate me from other websites that do great work with covering the parks and being there to show the new things that are happening every day. I don't have that ability. I'm not close enough. But I figured out my niche would be giving people new lenses to see the parks. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, we all know and love Disneyland or Magic Kingdom or Epcot or Islands of Adventure. But I thought, there's room here for us all to understand them in a different way. That's what the park paths were about. That's what the ride layouts kind of summed up to, was like a new way to see the thing you think you know really, really well. And I sort of took that idea and modeled my build outs after who I think of as the person who plowed the road for this sort of thing, S.W. Wilson of Ideal Build Out. So if you have never looked at SW's work, please check out Ideal Build Out. It's really, really incredible and a totally different level of what I do, and absolutely beautiful. But I thought, doing these build outs is another way of seeing the parks. It's that, if we're thinking the worlds of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. Yesterday, I figured I have figured out through those in-depth histories that, where there's 2 million written words that are just on my website, sort of in the background. And today I thought, well, that's interesting because that's these park paths, and that's ride counts and e-ticket counts, and, tracking park lineups. But fantasy, I really liked the idea of trying to look into the future. And, it all started for me with California Adventure, which I always say I'm a California Adventure apologist. I think that there's some great stuff there. And I just thought to myself, I want to see what this park would look like if they had stuck to the DCA 2.0 mindset. Right? Like, what if we could go back to 2012 and sort of direct a new path for the park? And so the one that I created, which is one of my favorites to this day, is, Discovery Bay. Like, is there a better concept for California Adventure than a sort of retro futuristic steampunk San Francisco? I added to that park an Avengers campus because, let's be real. We're not going to be able to get away without Disney and Pixar and Marvel, Star Wars. But how can we make it fit the Silicon Valley vibe and,
clever. Okay.
create a Tomorrowland for California Adventure using the superheroes. And probably one of my favorites was I kind of envisioned taking a portion of land around Paradise Bay and turning it into what I called Pacific Point, and creating the reclusive home of the one and only Lord Henry Mystic, but this time allowing him to be a collector who has salvaged antique dark rides from up and down the California coast and brought all the props from those dark rides to his home, and where you've also got the Golden Zephyr and the yo-yo swings, all reclad as like historic vintage amusements that he has brought back to Pacific Point and rehabbed. So yeah, that was my first. And I think it just really captured the spirit of like, what could this park be? So.
Well, that's it. I'm sorry. That's just genius in regard to bringing Mystic Manor finally stateside.
Right.
But for me, what I find really great about what Brian did, especially with this reimagining of DCA, is, well, he did literally what the Imagineers would have done. He worked within the boundaries of, for example, the park's perimeter road. He kept the building in place where all of DCA's parade floats are stored when they're not rolling through the performance corridors. It's a well thought out, practical, actually doable full build out of this theme park that then harkens back to what DCA's original mission was, to actually celebrate the very best of California all in one place.
Yeah, I what I heard from people in response to it was, I would pay a lot to go to this version of the park. And that told me I had gotten something just right when it comes to the fandom and the excitement about, like, I can picture myself there. I want that. It was really, really cool that there was a lot of questions and a lot of thoughts and a lot of feedback. But what I really loved was that the most asked question was like, how did you do this? Like, what software is this? Like, how did you put this together? Which told me that people were excited about it and that they were like looking up to me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm looking up to other people. So.
Right. And you said that they sent you stuff, right? People were sending you their suggestions, and it was like you are now a breeding ground of all these people with their ideas, and maybe we could do this and so forth. Right?
It's so cool. I mean, I get direct messages all the time that are like, someone like sketched something out real quick or was like, what about this? Or even just writes out like a narrative of like, here's what this park would be like, which is like the coolest thing that's ever happened. Because can you imagine, I mean, someone saying, I like your work so much that I want you to look at mine. Like, how cool is that?
Right. That is so
there
cool.
we go. Okay, now, given that this is a universal podcast, we should probably talk about the full build-outs that you've done for those parks. And I have to say at the start here, I'm especially intrigued by your take on Islands of Adventure.
Oh, well, thank you. I do think that, maybe I've already said this, but I think that is maybe my favorite project. I have a lot of favorite projects that I've done. But
okay.
I really, really do love that Islands of Adventure that I sort of envisioned. You know, I started from the mindset that I hold really near and dear, which is the conspiracy theory, maybe, that Islands of Adventure is a literary park. It is supposed to be about timeless, intergenerational books, comic books, stories, Sunday funnies, even, you know, Harry Potter and Jurassic Park. If you squint, it's like, oh yeah, they're novels. And they fit into that realm, and they just have such a great context in that park that's about stories. At which, by the way, I will say right now, I did get rid of Skull Island, Reign of Kong. So just
now, by the way, I can explain why that was put where it was put. Mike West, former Imagineer who moved over to Universal Creative to work on their Florida parks in the early 2000s. In fact, I think one of the very first things Mike worked on was the Simpsons ride. He told me that he deliberately put the Skull Island show building, where it is today, because, well, as you're walking uphill out of Toon Lagoon past Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls and heading toward the entrance of Jurassic Park, you can occasionally see the pterodon flyers moving over the trees. In fact, if you were there a couple of weeks ago, you got to see Eric and Miles riding.
That's right.
There we go.
Did Checking it off the list. Checking it off the list. That's right.
Oh, man, I got to do that someday. But anyway, because Jurassic Park in the original King Kong movie and the Peter Jackson Kong from 2005, they also feature these flying reptiles. Well, Mike thought, well, all right, that creates a bit of connective tissue between these two attractions at IOA. And from a storytelling point of view, there's kind of a logic as to why Island's Reign of Kong would have been so close to the entrance of IOA's Jurassic Park land. But all right, anyway, we talked about at the top of today's show your wonderful new 2-part Epic Universal full build out, which, by the way, Eric and I urge Epic Universal podcast to go check out especially after you finish listening to this interview. So, what drove you to your design decisions there?
Well, first, I'll admit my dirty secret, which is that I have not been to Epic Universe yet.
I joined the club. I got invited to the opening, couldn't make it because of Nancy's back surgery. I'm hoping this fall to get to see it. But anyway, all right. So, but again, you had sources, right?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, I have the same sources so many of us have had for years, which is I couldn't have done this without Alicia Stella and Orlando Park Stop, the absolutely unbelievable coverage that they've produced, and so many of the site plans and building shapes all come from documentation that Alicia has secured and posted, and then you can't do anything in this field without bioreconstruct being an inspiration. So all of those aerial images, if there was ever something where I wasn't sure on what the final shape of a building or a pathway or a backstage corner was, I knew I could find it from bio. So that definitely was a major source for me. Yeah, but I think I always say in the write-ups for these projects that I strive for them to be reasonable. I know that they can't be realistic because we're talking about what a park could look like decades in the future, and billions and billions and billions of dollars later. And that's envisioning that no new intellectual property is produced between now and then, because it could very well be that one of Epic Universe's expansion pads could be filled with a property that has not even entered production yet, hasn't even been dreamed of. But I really felt like I kept this one reasonable by really considering, access roads, and restaurants need loading docks, and restrooms can't be moved, which we've learned from Jim Scholl. That's just not going to happen. So, I think it's impossible to know what will really happen, but I certainly wanted to design this park in a way that felt like, yeah, that seems reasonable. That could be. And, even if something new comes over the horizon and becomes an obvious shoo-in for a park like Epic Universe, I think that the version I've sort of dreamed up is one that I could hopefully look back on in 10 years and go, yeah, you know what? Those additions I made would still make sense. Like, I found the sweet spot of timeless and intergenerational, and obviously also a little bit just from what interests me, because I can't help myself when I have free reign and no team saying no, the box office there, or the evaluation suggests that won't be. I can sort of just dream and imagine what I would like to see. So,
look, folks, Brian is being modest here. I mean, given his in-depth knowledge of Disney theme park history and Universal history, he's kind of become the master of the educated guess. And case in point, when you part of an article you did that talked about what Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom might look like when it finally achieves full build out, you actually floated the idea of that theme park then becoming home to a national park, which predated by a couple of years. The Imagineers plan to turn Tom Sawyer's Islands into Piston Peak National Park, which is where that theme park's new Cars Road Rally attraction is going to be built.
Yes, it's true. I did kind of envision a national park themed expansion of Magic Kingdom. And I sort of got the general area right. I maybe used some expansion pads that actually aren't suitable for development, is just my guess, because they aren't using them. So that makes me think they probably aren't usable. But, that's the fun of it, is I can sort of overlook that and created in that space a great excuse to bring back something like Geyser Mountain that was, suggested for potentially Disneyland and or Disneyland Paris in the 90s. So,
yeah. Well, again, folks, as I mentioned repeatedly and earlier, that Brian really does know his theme park history. And so if you want to read some terrific in-depth articles or want to take a peek over the horizon at what Epic Universe might look back in the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever, strongly urge you, Eric and I do, to head on over to Parklore and check out the very cool stuff, all of it that's over at that site. So on behalf of Mr. Hersey, Brian, thank you for joining us today. This has been a treat.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm even now that it's over, I can say this was definitely the highlight of the year. So I so appreciate you having me on, and I feel like a celebrity. Thank you.
No, it's great stuff. It should be celebrated. Oh, that was great. I so enjoyed talking with Brian. And seriously, if you want to check this out, folks, head on over to Parklore and take a look at that two-part series, which seriously has some amazing history about the Epic Universe project.
Yeah, even if you're not interested in like, hey, what it might be and so forth. It's 26,000 words.
Yeah.
He put his work in. Like that's a lot of words, but the history leading up to is really great as well. It kind of gives you, I looked at it as a book report because like obviously I joined the fandom. Epic was nearly done, right? I mean, that was what got my attention, but he gets really into the details. So check it out. And great interview too. Good job, Jim.
The other thing worth noting here, the other reason you want to go take a look at this is there are pieces of concept art in there from the early days of the project. I mean, for example, a somewhat more detailed entrance to the park and stuff like that. I mean, if you're interested in how it started, where it was when it opened, and where potentially it's going to go, check out that piece. But anyway, that brings us to the end, finally, of this week's Epic Universal podcast. So, look, as always, folks, we love to hear from you. If you have ideas for stories or comments about that, please feel free to reach out to us. In fact, Eric, how can the nice people get a hold of you?
You can find me at Eric Hersey on most social platforms. And I did get a couple good emails. So I got a couple goodies I'll share with you, Jim. I think there's a couple good shows coming up in our way. But if they want to send them directly to you, where can they get a hold of you, Jim?
Let's see. Well, you can follow me on X and Instagram at Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. But if you want to direct, it's just Jim at jimhillmedia.com. And for now, I guess that's it for today. So thanks for listening, and stick around to hear what's coming up this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode, and if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa. For animation and movie news, please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcast, Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about our podcast and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.